Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today, I start a new series based on the book Atlas Obscura, where I'm gonna be sharing with you some of the world's hidden wonders. Now, wonder is a bit of a loose term in this case. What it means is essentially a bunch of objects and places that are interesting for one reason or another and are spread throughout the world and that most people wouldn't know exist unless they live there. In this video, I'm gonna take a look at these hidden wonders in the United Kingdom and also in Ireland. So let's get to it. First off, we have the Silver Swan. This is a strange, lifelike musical automaton, which attempts to mimic a full-size swan. It was created in the 1770s and uses 3 clockwork mechanisms to perform a routine to some calm music, moving the swan's neck and other things. It's on display since 1872 at the Bowes Museum in Northern England. Then we have the Poison Garden. It was created by the Duchess of Northumberland in 2005 to collect and gather all poisonous and narcotic flora. To enter, you must first use a guide to unlock a black iron gate, decorated with a skull and crossbones, and a writing that says these plants can kill. It contains over 100 plants which can intoxicate, sicken, or kill any living thing, each with a guide as to how one should approach them. There are, however, certain unfatal plants, present only due to their narcotic nature, like poppies, cannabis, or hallucinogenic mushrooms. Because of the imminent danger, some plants are caged and under 24-hour security. Next, we have the Williamson tunnels. These date back to 1810. Between that year and 1840, a group of workers dug a network of underground tunnels beneath the city of Liverpool. But nobody really knows what the point that they were supposed to serve is. They were told to build it by a tobacco business owner called Joseph Williamson, and it is said that he believed in a doomsday type scenario due to his religion, so he wanted the tunnels for him and his family to live in when that day came. However, some people say that he just wanted to provide work for some men who had recently returned from the Napoleonic Wars. When he died in 1840, the work stopped and the tunnels were left to decay. However, in the 1990s, local residents created a charity and opened the tunnels, recovered them, and now they are open for visit to the public. Off the coast, we have a no man's land luxury sea fort. It was built in the 1800s to protect the English coast against a French invasion that never happened. It was never really used, and so the Ministry of Defense decommissioned it in the 1950s. They tried to sell it in 1963, but surprisingly, no one wanted a small abandoned fort in the middle of the ocean. Finally, in the 1990s, it was transformed into a luxury hotel with over 21 rooms, a roof garden, restaurants, and an indoor pool. But again, surprisingly, no one wanted to stay at the hotel. And this is where it gets really interesting. In 2004, a millionaire named Harmesh Puni bought the fort, wanting to rent it for special occasions. But contaminated water in the previous hotel pool caused an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease. The owner apparently went crazy, damaged the access to the helipads, and barricaded himself in the fort, finally being evicted in 2009. Recently, it was sold to another company who rents it for weddings and corporate retreats. It's located north of the Isle of Wight. Keeping in the tone of fortifications, we have the KELVEDONHATCH nuclear bunker. It was built in the 1950s, just before the Cold War, to house hundreds of British people in the case of a nuclear attack. It sort of reminds you of the vaults in the Fallout game series. It was a secret, and the access was made by an average-looking bungalow in the woods. It was equipped with air conditioning and heating, its own water supply, generators, and protected communication systems. However, it was never put to use. After the fall of the USSR, it was converted into a museum which anyone can visit and pretend like they're living in a post-apocalyptic nuclear world. Seems like fun. Also a part of the past, we have the Great Stone Sound Mirrors. These date back to the end of World War I and Britain's national defense strategy. They were built to sort of work like giant ears, acoustic mirrors if you will. with the goal of providing a 15-minute warning of an air invasion by magnifying the sound waves at a distance from the English Channel and projecting them into a microphone. I guess once radars were invented, these didn't really serve a lot of purpose, but they're still there to be seen. Next, we stay inside a military theme with the MAUNSELL Army Sea Forts. They're located in the Thames estuary east of London, part of the Thames Defence Network. These date back to World War II and were built in 1942 as anti-aircraft towers to bring down German airplanes. There were originally 7 forts, each on stilts above the water and connected by bridges. However, only 2 remain today, the Red Sands Fort and the Shivering Sands Fort, as well as the Central Command Tower. In the 1960s, pirate radio broadcasters moved in to house their unauthorized radio stations. However, in 1966, one of the radio owners died in a fight with another radio owner, so the next year the British government made offshore radio broadcast illegal, and the forts have been abandoned ever since. The next one is incredibly interesting. It's called the Difference Engine No. 2, and it's essentially a Victorian age computer. The original one was built by a man called Charles Babbage in 1822. It was an engine with cranks and gears capable of generating mathematical tables. However, at the time it was too large, complicated, and expensive to produce. He was subsidized by the government, but after 10 years he had only built a small part of the prototype. So he then created version number 2, which was supposed to be simpler and better, but it also never got to a working model. Babbage died in 1871 with a lot of different designs and ideas that surpassed the possibilities of the age he lived in. In 1985, London Science Museum started looking up on some of the designs, and in 1991, they were able to build a functioning difference engine. In 2002, they added a printing apparatus. It's obviously useless when compared to modern machines, but it's still an interesting look at such an early idea for innovation. Next, we have the Highgate Cemetery. It opened in 1839. And is home to many famous residents, which is what makes it so interesting. Figures like Karl Marx, sci-fi author Douglas Adams, Adam Worth, the possible inspiration for the enemy in the Sherlock Holmes series, amongst many others. In Victorian times, anyone of importance wanted to be buried here. But it quickly fell out of fashion, if you will. In the 1940s, it really fell into decay. Stories about living dead creatures, including a Transylvanian prince vampire, became popular amongst the local population, and it got to a point of an official vampire hunt taking place in 1870, with a mob of people wielding crosses, stakes, and garlic breaking into the cemetery, only to find that there were no vampires. This whole thing led to people being convicted of vandalizing memorials, and up to today, the cemetery seems to be completely abandoned. Moving to Ireland, we have the Skellig Michael, which some of you might know from the recent Star Wars movies. It served as the background for the ending of The Force Awakens and a good part of The Last Jedi in the new Star Wars trilogy, which has led many fans to visit the island. In the movies, it's the refuge of Luke Skywalker, but in reality it's just a rocky island in Ireland. But it does have an interesting story. In the 7th century, a few monks sequestered themselves on the island, much alike Luke in the movies. Skellig derives from the Irish word that means steep rock, and the monks who lived there were Christian, so they created a monastic outpost on the island. Using those stones, the monks built hundreds of stairs leading to the island's summit, where they built 6 beehive-shaped huts and a small chapel. Despite being few, they were able to outlast many Viking raids during the 9th century. They stayed there until the 12th century, being forced back to the mainland by 2 frequent storms. It then was pretty much untouched for a few hundred years. Then we have the Victoria's Way Indian Sculpture Park. This is a park in Ireland, which contains some very odd sculptures. It covers 22 acres and includes pictures of Buddha, a giant cut finger, one that's called a split man, which is a figure ripping itself in two, amongst many others. It was created by Victor Langheld in 1989 after returning from India on a trip of spiritual enlightenment, which justifies the presence of so many Hindu statues. They represent the voyage from birth to death, starting with a child emerging from a fist to an old man in a sinking boat, representing the ferryman which would take the dead into the underworld. Also in Ireland, the Leviathan of Parsonstown. This 17.7 telescope was built by William Parsons in the 1840s. He wanted to study the space phenomena he knew as nebulae, and his construction allowed a view of the solar system in greater detail than ever before. It remained the largest telescope in the world for about 75 years, before falling into disuse in 1878, being dismantled in 1908. However, in the 1990s, it was rebuilt and made to function again, and is now open for the public. Next, the Vanishing Lake of Northern Ireland. This is the only place/item on the list which won't always be there if you choose to visit it. It is in fact a lake, but it sits on top of a bed of porous limestone with a plug hole that attracts peat. When enough peat accumulates, the hole prevents drainage and the water rises, but if there isn't any, the lake empties and disappears, creating an interesting natural phenomenon. Moving to Scotland, we have Fingal's Cave. Now, earlier we saw the island which was used as the set on Star Wars. Well, this cave was used in the Harry Potter films, more precisely as the location in which the characters of Harry Potter and Professor Dumbledore found one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. In reality, it's just a sea cave, but it does have walls of perfectly hexagonal columns. Celtic legends say that it was part of a bridge across the sea where giants fought each other. However, the real explanation seems to be that it was formed by lava which cooled so slowly that when it broke apart it formed these hexagonal pillars. To finish, we go back to London for Archie the giant squid. A giant squid is usually associated with an undersea monster. You see it in a lot of books, stories, movies, and even in the Norse mythology, with the idea of a kraken which devoured ships at sea. However, giant squids actually exist. The first actual photo was only taken in 2002, although written reports date back to the 1600s. And there's even one who, for his sake, was sadly caught. It's placed at the National History Museum at a great 8.5 meters in length. It was caught in 2004 and humorously named Archie in recognition of its species name, Archaeopteryx dux, which I'm mispronouncing. It now spends its days preserved in a custom-made acrylic tank. So, to sum it up, the Kraken is real and you can go see it. And those are some of the hidden wonders in the UK and Ireland. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to leave any comments below and subscribe if you want to catch future videos. I will see you in the next video.